This is fun.
I'm glad.
God, I could do this forever, man.
All right. So we'll go ahead and get started here again with Venus for a Capricorn ascendant. And I'm back again with Dustin Cormier, level 2 student in the astrological apprenticeship course at Asheville Vedic Astrology. We're going to be discussing Venus for Capricorn ascendant with the focus on the fact of Venus's house lord rulerships, which for Capricorn deals with Taurus, the 5th house, as well as Libra, the 10th house. And we'll also consider what does that mean that Venus is exalted in the 3rd, but debilitated in the 9th. And interesting stuff. So welcome, Dustin. It's great to have you again.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I'm real pleasure being here talking with you about this stuff.
Yeah, I see that you also don't ever change your shirt.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's just we just always go with these same clothes. Got my crazy lion blanket there for months at a time.
Oh, right. I suppose I need to fix. We're talking about Venus.
Oh, good one. Yep, nice.
How's this? Is that better?
That looks like Venus to me.
Yeah, Venus. I've astrally projected to orbiting Venus. But anyway, I know that when we discussed doing these videos that you mentioned you had copious notes. So when you access your notes, what is the first thing that comes to mind about these kind of issues that we've been discussing and how Venus relates to Capricorn?
You got it, Ryan. Okay, so Venus is, we've been talking a lot about how Capricorn really has these black and white tones in a lot of ways. Saturn is often considered the planet of greatness. And if all the things are propped properly for a Capricorn ascendant, it can just be an incredibly powerful karma dissolving sign. Now, Venus has the same sort of vibe. The reason is because Venus is exalted in the 3rd house, which is close to the 4th house. So the closer Venus is to Pisces for a Capricorn ascendant, the closer it is to exaltation as well as positive Digbala. And it's the opposite. The further, the more Venus gets towards Virgo, it's also closer to Venus's opposite Digbala as well. So Venus as the 5th and 10th lord, there's a lot of important data coming through for Capricorn in regards to Venus.
Right.
Is the only auspicious yoga producer. That is the particular thing that Brihat Parashara gives us. So all of the Earth and air planets tend to do well with Venus, Saturn, and Mercury. Venus in particular is taking care of the 5th house, which is the Dharma house, one of the Dharma houses for Capricorn, as well as the 10th lord, the 10th lord being the strongest angle. So we know Capricorn is the natural 10th sign anyway, so Capricorn is in the business of business. They want to be working hard. They want to be constantly working at their career and to things that show them in a positive limelight in society and to themselves. They even want to see their own work in front of them manifest, not felt. So Capricorn having the... I always like to make these points. So for any ascendant, most times, if you have a benefic ruling an angle, it tends to not be as good. This is a general rule that Parashara gives us. The reason is because if you have an angular lord, the angular lord attracts activity. And having a benefic as an angular lord means that you don't push towards those activities within your own, it's not your own will per se. It's just attraction. Venus is all about attraction. Now, this goes to say that Capricorn, it's interesting that Parashara gives Venus an auspicious indication, even though it's a benefic as an angular lord. This kind of shows how most times when you see Capricorn working, we've been talking about the Zen theme being very radiant in particular and emphasized for a Capricorn. Anytime you see a Capricorn working at their best, it's probably some passion project that is connected to something much bigger than themselves. They're probably in an industry where they have attached themselves doing the Capricorn, first and second rulership the Capricorn does. Saturn rules the first and second for a Capricorn ascendant. The person's going to try to make a livelihood that's bound to last. Something that they're going to do that they know is going to last a long time, not any sort of fleeting gambling sort of thing. To have the 10th Lord as a benefic, it's a kind of a wonderful trine happening there, where the person, after having built themselves and gotten into some kind of company, they're probably, especially if the Venus is well placed and close to the 4th and 3rd house axis, the Venus attracts jobs in that industry naturally, which are well suited to the Capricorn's fulfillment. Getting back to the theme of Sisyphus's boulder. Sisyphus pushes the boulder up, and then he has to let it fall again. He pushes it up and lets it fall again. And it's the subjective fulfillment that gives Capricorn its ease. Capricorn has to lift that boulder up and to let it fall no matter what. That's just part of Capricorn's karma. They have to do some kind of liberating, some kind of job, some kind of career. And having a well-placed Venus, well, again, Venus is very black and white. If Venus is close to Pisces, they will attract fulfillments, the 10th Lord. They will attract activity no matter where they are, which is fulfilling for them. It's engaging. They will love to expand further into their career, 10th house, right? So the 10th and 5th Lord theme too. I bet Capricorn feels great at a recreational level about hacking at their hobbies, about getting better at their job, about getting it better at whatever it is that makes them shine in society. And that's on a general note. Even if the Venus is in the 9th house and it's kind of ill-placed or whatever, the Capricorn, no matter what, will still enjoy that part of their recreational life will be developing something that they think could get them farther ahead in life.
And those are wonderful points, and this just further ties in this idea. And we've seen this with other ascendants, how the lordships of the planets from the ascendant and where those lords are exalted really describes and defines this symbolism of the ascendant that most astrologers take for granted, don't really think about. And having the 5th Lord and the 10th Lord exalted in the 3rd, again, shows us that the person's hobbies, their creativity, they're going to tend to be work-related. They're going to tend to be related to their career in some way. It's often these kinds of combinations where you see a person who's hopefully their work and the things they enjoy doing are together. I've given examples before where I knew a person who was a school teacher, but his real passion was growing roses and gardening. And you hear people all the time that say, once I find that thing that's just going to make it, it's going to be the thing that I love, that's going to be my work. Well, oddly enough, that's more applicable to someone who's, say, a Capricorn ascendant, because it's more likely that those things will overlap. Because for most of us, the things that rule over our career and the work that we do are not necessarily related to our hobbies and our interests and the things that when we get home we love doing. It's rare that those kinds of things happen. I'm an astrologer and I teach meditation, but I love sitting for hours playing music. It's not what I actually do. I might have gotten paid for it a few times in my life, but that's not, for me, I'm not a Capricorn ascendant, so those things don't line up. They're just two almost separate areas of life. And when we think about that Venus, that 5th and that 10th Lord, this is what gets me. That 5th and that 10th Lord, for a Capricorn ascendant, it is debilitated. It is debilitated in the 9th house, which again is a house of idealism. It's a house of doing things because it brings a sense of peace and fortune and fulfillment. And when we think about Capricorn, again, this is not one of those ascendants that is meant to be idealistic.
Yeah.
It's not meant to get involved in things because it has a grand idea of how the world can be better. It's meant to be practical. You know, the third house is a practical house.
Yes.
Gemini is a practical sign. Yes, Gemini is an air sign. The reason I'm throwing Gemini in is because the third house tends to have similar qualities to the third sign, Gemini. But Gemini looks around and takes in information and sees how does that information go together. Gemini is not looking around with some kind of poetic vision of life and trying to see meaning in all these things. Gemini is putting together ideas that it really enjoys the bringing together of ideas and seeing how things can be built greater because of a practical value.
Certainly. And I think a huge emphasis there too is personal experience, as opposed to knowledge given secondhand from tradition or from a book or what have you.
And you're saying that because the ninth house is more like you learn from a wise elder versus you just figure it out on your own, which is more third house thing.
Certainly, from your own visceral learned experience. Right. In fact, astrology is just the building blocks of the most beautiful philosophical wisdom. We can see just that the nature of work itself at its highest regard. If we were to think of a well-placed Venus for a Capricorn closer to the third house, enjoying one's own exploring of the paths, not trying to intuit what's the best path, but exploring, getting one's fingers right into the dirt and smacking your head against what's in front of you and making mistakes. Capricorn lives for this sort of visceral lived experience of how it can engage in whatever field it's interested in. And when you get to the high end of a Capricorn's life, which is probably the juicy part for Capricorn because they've been developing on these things all this time. Capricorn is a slow planet and it takes a long time to get to where it needs to be. Once Capricorn is at an old age, and if its Venus is well placed, all of its experience, it's been experiencing it all this time. It's been giving itself the joyous capacity to explore its field for itself, whatever that field might be, whether it's music, whether it's microbiology, or something very complex like that. The Capricorn person will enjoy putting the specimen on the microscope, doing the notes, getting it all down in their own way. And they'll find through their own passion path what is the best way to take those notes. And it's in their experience. So that by the time they're older, when you're speaking to a Capricorn, they have it in their neurosystem. They have it in their nerves. And when you talk to them, they just got to tap into the experience that they've been plugging away at joyously all this time. They're a wellspring of a certain type of lived knowledge. Right, exactly.
I couldn't have said it any better. But, when we, as you were talking, a few examples came up. One of them, there was a story that I was reading where it was a fantasy story where these individuals were on this quest, and part of the quest was to find these keys. And one way you found one of the keys was there was a puzzle they had to put together, which supposedly if they put it together correctly, it would reveal the beauty of all life, like the beauty of all living things, of all life. And what happens in this story is that the individuals are plugging away at this puzzle, and they know they're going to be, they have to do it until it's done. And they started out when they were young in their 20s, and they lived into ripe old age, and they still couldn't figure it out. And then finally, one of the duo died, and then the other individual found the secret, and it was a metaphor for the beauty of life. Wasn't putting together this mosaic puzzle. It was the trying of doing it, and all the stuff that happened while they lived their life trying to figure out this thing, which really didn't have an answer. But the beauty of life came from suffering the loss of their spouse, seeing their child go away, having their best friend die, seeing the beauty of orchards blooming, these sorts of things. And that's a very Capricorn, well, it's for most of us, I think, on a broader level, but that's a very Capricorn kind of way of what you're describing. And I also saw a meme which had an image of a woman like in complete distress that said, I'm tired of all the things, I'm tired of living through all the things that haven't killed me but only make me stronger.
Yeah, no kidding, eh?
Yeah, and that's a very real thing. You know, some people, it's just like one horrible thing after the other, and yeah, it makes them stronger. But hey, eventually, you hope that shit passes.
Yeah. I mean, it only makes you stronger to the point where you've got some tensile. I don't know, it's like if you just twist aluminum enough, at first it can kind of compress it and make it like tighter. But if
Right.
you keep twisting it, it's
It's going to break.
right?
Yeah. So
Totally.
I think with what you were describing, and maybe some of these metaphors or analogies will help people understand, you know, what is, you know, Venus is beauty, and Venus is the beauty of life. And this is one of the ways that if Capricorn can find some way to understand this, to work this out, they will tend to experience that beauty and that grace of that most wonderful planet for Capricorn, Venus.
Yes, that would be definitely one, especially, you know, if we were to make a final note, if there are any yogas present in, especially with Saturn or Mercury,
Right.
Venus is going to be the one to really let it flower.
Right.
If anything is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and conclude here for Venus and Capricorn Ascendant, and we will move on to our next section, which we'll post in about a week, related to Mercury for Capricorn Ascendant. Sound good?
Sounds great. Thanks a lot, Ryan. I'm loving
Okay.
this.
No problem. Great.